adjusted lockdown restrictions. ANC national spokesperson Pule Mabe joins us now live. Pule, of course, you're going to welcome these decisions, but let me start with two experts who are quite worried about the president's decision to allow 700 people to gather indoors and 2,000 outdoors. They actually said it was out of sync with everything else he said regarding trying to fight this virus. I think Pule is frozen.
Evening, Shahan, and evening, JJ.
Evening.
No, I can hear you.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, I can hear you, Shahan. Now, I think what is important is that as we welcome the president's address this evening, is the need for us to make sure that where these public gatherings are taking place, either indoor or outdoor, there is still an exercise of social distancing. People could still wear their masks, do everything else that is required as part of following through on the health protocols necessary to curb the spread of coronavirus. Actually, what the observation we made this past weekend when we were out on the ground campaigning for local government elections is that many of our people out there in communities are wearing masks. They are exercising the required social distancing. We need to make people appreciate that this new way of doing things is what we all have to live with. That is the only way through which we'll be able to return to normality without necessarily putting ourselves into super spreader events.
But it's convenient, isn't it? Because you flouted the regulations with the number of people who were there on Monday. And now we have this decision saying up to 2,000 people can actually gather. The president admitted himself that it's difficult to keep an eye on people when they gather outside. So what makes you think that anyone's going to be able to do that with 2,000 people? That is going to be a super spreader event.
Well, just to clarify, we did not flout regulations on Monday. We had we had provided for chairs at the church square equal to the number that was required under COVID. We had our own security, our own jog, manning all the different sites at the church square to make sure that we could be able to keep to the required number in line with what was provided for under adjusted alert level 2. So this is not out of convenience. This is because of, we believe that when they come out to pronounce on what comes out of the National Coronavirus Command Council, their pronouncement are largely based on science, and we want to believe that it is scientific interventions that are driven by evidence that will be able to really deal with this pandemic.
If I may come in there, Pule, I think it's Mvula Mokonyane was asked by one of our journalists how many people were at the square. I think we just need to be factual there, that you had 500 chairs, but you had lots of people standing all over the place, which means immediately you've exceeded your 500. So I think that there you need to take a little bit of responsibility and lead by example. Would you agree, to the nation now that your manifesto launch was more than 500 people?
Well, from where we are sitting, I even received a report from the organizing team. And I'm sure that if there's any information that they need to share with us, to really give us that picture, will allow them to do so. In the African National Congress, to really assess the work that has got to be done as it relates to elections. What we have said and the message we have carried forward is that we have got to make sure that we work on making sure we meet the number of 500 in whatever way or form.
Yeah. Okay. We'll have to follow that up, but because we all saw it, it was live on television that we had more than 500 people. But if you are still waiting for a report on that, that's a separate matter. Can you tell me whether or not the president consulted you in as far as an option to just basically get rid of the state of disaster? We've just had the leader of the opposition who spoke before you saying you know, let's just get rid of the state of disaster, because it's clear that it's difficult to adhere to it. If you look at your ANC manifesto, you look at the EFF manifesto and other manifestos, there seems to be a difficulty with keeping to these numbers. The churches also are complaining that, you know, if they're having a 25,000-seater, if you say to them 500 or 700, you are inconveniencing them. Is there a discussion between the presidency or the government and the ANC on lifting the state of disaster altogether?
Well, JJ, like all other parties, we do reflect on the ongoing state of disaster from time to time. We do receive reports from our deployees in the National Executive Committee on the many interventions that they are considering, because it is a concern to us. We would want the economy to go back to normality, but we'll want such kind of a move to happen when it is safer to do so for citizens, because we in the ANC will not agree on an approach that does not really safeguard the lives of others. We have said everything else that has got to happen as it relates to how we deal with the state of disaster must be guided by science. And we are comforted by the work that the ABLE National Coronavirus Command Council has been doing, the update that they've been coming out to give even to the general public beyond the ANC on what they are seeing. Where there are declines, they are able to at least give the nation a bit of relief, like what the president has done today. I'm sure if we can achieve the much needed herd immunity, we will be able to remove this restraints that are there, that the state of disaster, yes.
Yeah. My final question, Pule, one of the things that have spoiled the management of the COVID was the corruption and that has gone on even in the midst of this pandemic. And the latest report on Digital Vibes put a big stain on the governing party and how it has managed this pandemic. Have you discussed as a governing party the immediate stepping aside of somebody like Zweli Mkhize, the same way that in government they have now suspended 10 officials who's taking political responsibility? Have you discussed that? Because from what we heard yesterday, it looks like, you know, Zweli Mkhize was a wonderful guy. We're all just being too rude to him or whatever else that the president meant. Can you tell the country what, following that report that is fresh in our minds now, whether the ANC is going to take any action politically in terms of its deployees in as far as this scandal is concerned?
Well, JJ, the African National Congress has not met to reflect on the report that was released yesterday, the Digital Vibes report. We actually have since suspended all our National Executive Committee and National Working Committee meetings to focus on local government elections. Should it happen that at the end of this campaigning period, when we meet, comrades want to reflect and veer in and arrive at whatever determination, the ANC will be able at that point to communicate its position out to the public. It would be unfair of me as a national spokesperson to single-handedly come here on the station and then pronounce on a position that the organization has not reflected on. I am guided by the protocols of our own organization, discussions and resolutions taken at those committees that make up our structure, the National Working Committee and the National Executive Committee, which are now not really conducting their everyday business, because then we now have got to focus everything on elections. Members of the NEC are on the ground, galvanizing support for the movement so that communities can go out there and vote for the ANC come the 1st of November. That is what we assist with.
But your government has suspended 10 officials. They didn't give that excuse. They have suspended 10 officials, so those officials now are a scapegoat, and the politicians are busy campaigning. Do you think that's fair?
Well, JJ, I have not said in any way your expression that the ANC is going to renege from having a discussion about this. The president yesterday, when he was engaging with the media, having a Q&A at Lituli House, this question did come to the fore, and the president did answer it to the extent that, of course, this would have had its own negative effect on the work, on the good work that the government was doing to be able to deal with the corona, to be able to deal with the pandemic. When the ANC meets in its fullest, if it deems fit the necessity to really reflect on some of these current affairs, it will do so. And the ANC leadership is not shy to take decisions. If there are things that warrant that the organization must take certain decisions, it will have to do so. But these are matters that really happened in the state. Comrade Zweli, as you know, has not been indicted to appear in a court of law or being criminally charged, even out of this report that has since been released. We wouldn't really now want to veer into merits and demerits of reports. We know fully well that the kind of blight that corruption casts on the work of our government is such that if the ANC-led government is not seen to be taking decisive action on those, it could actually compromise and undermine the kind of that we want to Africa. I mean, we're going out now campaigning on a ticket of morality. We've got to make sure that what we tell our people and the actions we take are in sync with what we are trying to do, going even into these local government elections.
All right, Pule, we have to leave it right there. Your line is breaking up and we've run out of time. Appreciate your insight. It's always interesting hearing the spin, hey?
Spin doctor.
But Pule says he doesn't spin, by the way. I asked him when he was here in studio. He's like, no, I'm not spinning.
Then ought to be his job.
Exactly, exactly.